Hello and welcome to today's GGKP webinar, SDGs Erosion, How Terrestrial Natural Capital Will Save the 2030 Agenda. I'm John Maughan, the Research Program Manager here at GGKP. Thank you so much for being here with us today. For those of you who aren't familiar with the GGKP, we are a global network of experts and organizations dedicated to providing the policy, business, and finance communities with knowledge, guidance, data, and tools to transition to an inclusive green economy. I encourage you to visit our web platform online and join the growing community. Today's webinar has been organized in collaboration with the Economics of Land Degradation Initiative, or ELD, based at GIZ in Germany. ELD is a global collaboration to evaluate and raise awareness on the economic benefits of land and land-based ecosystems. We're also very fortunate to be joined by leading experts from the ELD initiative and the GGKP Natural Capital Expert Group, the Basque Center for Climate Change in Spain, Development Alternatives in India, the National Statistical Committee of the Kyrgyz Republic, and the World Bank, in the person of a former advisor to the government of Rwanda, wearing two hats there. GGKP is building a broad partnership in favor of natural capital-based green growth. We're working with today's partners and others, including the Economics for Nature group, supported by the Maughan Foundation, to ensure that countries around the world understand the importance of natural capital as a lever to achieve green growth and to achieve the SDGs, even as we embark on the green recovery post-COVID. We hope you will join us in this vision. We encourage audience members to submit questions and comments throughout today's discussion. It's a fantastic opportunity to engage directly with this panel of experts. After the webinar, we'd appreciate if you could take just a minute or two of your time to take a short survey. Your feedback will greatly help us in shaping future webinars. And finally, please note that today's presentations, as well as a full recording of the webinar, will be available shortly on our website at ggkp.org. Now, it's my pleasure to introduce to you today our partner for today's event, Mark Schauer. He is the coordinator of the Economics of Land Degradation Secretariat. He's responsible for synchronizing the partners, donors, policy dialogues, and project countries that make up the ELD initiative. Before Mark joined GIZ, he worked for UNEP as the head of the central office of TEEB, the Economics of Ecosystem Biodiversity, TEEB, and for the Division of International Nature Conservation of the German Federal Ministry for the Environment, or better known sometimes as BMU. Mark, so great to have you with us today. Over to you.
Thanks a lot, John, and thanks a lot for having us. ELD has been working with GGKP for a couple of years now, I can't really specify, and it was always a very, very constructive and friendly working atmosphere, which we have friendly. It's like working friendly, meaning working with friends. This is what I want to say here with my limited words. Thanks for giving us the opportunity to present some of the work here today and overall give a little bit of introduction into the ELD initiative there. I have a few slides for you, and after that, I'd like to hand over to the other panelists there, leaving you to the moderation of Bob Costanza there. So, quick run through or a quick introduction into the ELD initiative here through the slides. Can I get the next slide? So ELD was initially brought to life as an awareness raising tool. You all know that, of course, economic information can provide some substantial arguments for investing into, in our case, sustainable land management, sustainable management of ecosystem services. And for us, we came into life because obviously others did good jobs in communicating the value of ecosystem services in the context of biodiversity, of climate change. And ELD, and this is why it's called economics of land degradation. We pointed out in our beginning the costs of land degradation, right? You can see a couple of numbers here. And we worked closely together in that context through an international network. John had already mentioned that, but closely with UNCCD, the United Nations Convention to Combat Desertification there. So, and for us, it's important to show that the true cost of degradation and the benefits of investing in sustainable land management measures, as I said there. Next one, please. The background of the ELD initiative is that land degradation, of course, is a global problem. We're showing that. It's not only a problem of, say, areas or countries suffering from desertification or located in dry areas, but it's a global problem. Even the EU acknowledges this now. The world's poor are hit hardest because they are very much depending on the ecosystem services provided by these terrestrial ecosystems, and it makes a difference how we use our land there. Next one, please. Our objective is to show the true cost of land degradation, as I said, and the benefits. I'm sorry, can you click through this slide here? So I'll get, yeah. And it was set up in the beginning by, as I said, the United Nations Convention to Combat Desertification. Germany was involved in the EU. I'm calling from Germany right now because we're hosted by GIZ, that's introduced by John already. And the overall aim of our work is to create robust scientific information and feed this also into policy or decision-maker in decision-making processes, policy or private sector there. We do not want that the scientific research, the results of our work just collects dust on the shelf. We want to utilize it. We want to make it accessible, understandable, usable for our partners in the decision-making field there. Next one, please. And of course, we're not doing this by ourselves here in this little office at GIZ. This is what I'm most proud of in the last, about our work in the last years there. We built a substantial network of partners there. GGKP is in there. You see a number of international research institutions, internationally active research institutions, international institutions there. But next one, please. We're also working hard on national level. We're trying to generate evidence and knowledge on the economic consequence of land degradation and show ways forward through scenarios, through investment infos on investment support, and supplement this with capacity development activities, trainings, how to create this economic information and how to utilize it also. And then, as I said before, a stakeholder dialogue is a very important part of our work as well, reaching out to decision makers there. Next one, please. For us, we're working in a number of contexts here, including GGKP. Could you click into that slide here? There's a couple of more elements coming up. Yes, sorry. So we're working with the Green Growth Knowledge Platform there in the context of natural capital, as you can see in that left column there of yours. We're working, for example, with the United Nations Environment Program in the context of the nature-based solutions there. This overarching concept, which is becoming more and more popular right now, and we're looking into the state of finance and investment on that concept there. But we're also working on tools for financing this on national level. There is an example here for where we have just engaged in Mexico, in the state of Oaxaca, with the aim to work with regional, but also with federal decision makers there in the context of mezcal plantations, of other sustainable land use approaches there. This is just one example. Next slide, please. With our friends here, and you'll hear more about this work later on, we've been working and teaming up with GGKP, and I'm super happy that this worked out, and we will continue our engagement there in Kyrgyzstan, in India, and in Rwanda. But this should only be a quick introduction into later presentations then for you. Next one, please. And just to show where we're active as well, you can see that there is a number of countries where ELD is or has been active so far. There is a strong focus on Africa, obviously, but we are trying to get all over the place, including places like Iceland. We'll be working, or we are working, in Australia. And next one, please. And this also already gives me the pleasure to finish my presentation here and hand over to our moderator there. Thanks for your attention. I'd like to put you in the capable hands now of Robert Bob Costanza. Bob will be our moderator for today. And besides being a moderator, Bob is a professor and vice chancellor at the Crawford School of Public Policy at ANU, Australian National University in Canberra. So while I'm having my breakfast here, Bob has already had his dinner. Bob has been with the ELD initiative for a long time now. I think it's been 2012 or so. They're part of our ELD family. And of course, Bob has a very long list of publications there along the line of natural capital, and has been instrumental in setting up this concept. And I'm very happy, Bob, that we're having you here. So thanks for your attention, and I hand over to Bob.
Thank you, Mark, and thank you, John. And as Mark said, I've been involved with the ELD project. We're trying to rename it the Economics of Land Dynamics. As Mark said, we're more interested in sustainable land management and sort of the positive solutions that can happen to reverse land degradation, to restore natural capital, to encourage regenerative agriculture and other approaches that can really restore our natural capital assets and the ecosystem services that come from them. So I'm very happy to be moderating this panel, and I'm very inspired by the amount of attention and policy attention that natural capital and ecosystem services are receiving. It seems to be growing all the time. You probably know about things like the IPBES project. You've heard about the TEEB initiative, the Economics of Ecosystems and Biodiversity that Mark was involved with several years ago, the Millennium Ecosystem Assessment before that. But there's also things like the Ecosystem Services Partnership, which is a global alliance that's been coordinating with ELD and with many of these initiatives around the world. And there are some new initiatives like the Wellbeing Economy Alliance that's trying to bring together all of the governments and researchers and NGOs around the topic of building an economy based on well-being rather than simply mindless pursuit of GDP growth. How do we actually improve the well-being of not only humans but the rest of nature? And I think that's the overarching sort of framework that I think we're coming from. How do we take a much broader, more systems-oriented perspective, looking at the whole planet and all of the different components and assets that we have on this beautiful Earth, and how do we build a sustainable and desirable future going forward? And I think that's what many of these initiatives are trying to do. So I won't take too much more of your time, and I think I will turn it over now to our plenary speaker, Anil Markandya. He's a distinguished professor at the Basque Center for Climate Change and an honorary professor of economics at the University of Bath. And Anil, I'm going to turn it over to you. After that, I'll introduce our other panelists, and we'll have some discussion finally after they're finished with their presentations. So, Anil, take it away.
Thank you, Bob. Can you hear me? Clear?
Yes.
So I'm going to speak on the work we've been doing at the Basque Center for Climate Change with other partners in some of the countries that Mark has mentioned. And what we've been, it divides into two parts, but it all relates to tracking natural capital in relation to the SDGs. The presentation here will talk about some of the methodologies and some of the applications. Next slide, please. We have worked with a concept we call the natural capital gap, and it's based on the idea that meeting of several of the SDGs implies an increase in natural capital. The ones particularly that we've been focusing on are shown on the slide on the right-hand side. And what we've tried to do is to calculate how much the natural capital stock would have to increase to meet the different SDGs. We work in terms of the natural capital stock changes needed in physical terms as well as in monetary terms. And the work was done initially at a global level, so it is for the world as a whole. Next slide, please. This gives you a summary of the estimates that we made in a paper which GGKP has published. And we looked not only at what ELD's work focusing on, which is the issue of land degradation, but we've also looked at air pollution, water pollution, reduced materials, greenhouse gas emissions, climate-related disasters. We haven't succeeded yet to work on coastal and marine areas. We've looked at forest loss, wetlands, and protected areas. And the calculations give quite a wide range. We don't get figures very exact for reasons which are explained in the paper, but the estimates of the increase in natural capital is of the order of somewhere between 32 trillion and $87 trillion. And our best estimate of the value of natural capital carried out by the World Bank at the present time is about 105 trillion. So in fact, meeting the SDGs would make a significant increase in that value of natural capital, somewhere between 30 and 80%. Next slide, please. Yeah, sorry, this just focuses on some of the areas which are related to the work which the ELD has been looking at, but particularly degraded land, which is a major component of that total. It's the meeting the SDGs with regard to the land targets makes up the largest component of the increase in natural capital. Forest loss is also very big. Wetlands are smaller, but the range there is very wide. It's very difficult to get accurate estimates, which indicates the need for further work. Next slide, please. Sorry. Can we go to the next slide? Well, this just highlights again and the degraded land. Can we move on, please? So at the same time as looking at the increases in natural capital, we've also done work to calculate how much financial capital we would need to achieve these increases in natural capital associated with the SDGs. So we do need more financial capital over the next decade. And we made some preliminary estimates, which are also coming out in a paper with GGKP is putting out. And they come out at, for the 8 of the SDGs at around about 770 billion a year, or around for the whole decade at around 8 trillion globally. The greatest gains, so if you compare this figure of the financial capital with the range that I just indicated for the value of the increase in natural capital, you can see that undertaking these financial outlays produces a very significant return on the investment. The greatest gains from investment come from land remediation, avoided deforestation, wetlands, material efficiency, and air pollution reduction. The increases in natural capital are well justified on these grounds, on grounds of what we might call comparison between the costs of the programs and the increases in natural capital that they achieve. Next slide, please. At the same time as working at the global level, we're also working at the national level, and within the national programs, there are some countries working at a much more in-depth analysis for specific projects. As John indicated at the beginning, and Mark mentioned, there are 3 countries in which programs have been undertaken, India, Rwanda, and the Kyrgyz Republic, in which we are involved in looking at the benefits of land, specifically now land remediation. And here in the work which we've been involved in, particularly deeply from the Basque Center in India, we've compared a more traditional cost-benefit approach with a capitals approach. You will hear more about these country studies from country representatives, so I won't go into great detail, but let's just say a few words on the India study. The next slide, please. So in India, what they've been looking at collecting information over quite a long period of time for one particular region, and they estimated the value of ecosystem services and the augmented value of natural capital in terms of land, air, water, and biodiversity as a function of how the land was used and managed. So out of the 187 villages where development alternatives has intervened, a comparison was made between changes in ecosystem services in a subset of those against a control group in which the program was not undertaken. So it was a real in-depth study, which also involved collecting data over a sustained period of time. Next slide, please. So the benefits that were valued included crop and livestock incomes, timber and non-timber forest products, changes in biodiversity, and carbon sequestration. And the results found that there were very high benefits to cost ratios from undertaking these remediation programs. The benefits of just the crop and livestock incomes were greater than the cost, but when you added in the benefits, the other benefits, you got an even greater ratio of the benefits to costs. Next slide, please. And then we also took a capitals approach in which we looked at the financial capital, which was involved in achieving these gains, compared it to the natural capital increases. And the natural capital increases were over 100 times the financial capital investments involved. At the same time, the team at Development Alternatives also looked at issues relating to social capital, which couldn't be done in quantitative terms, but the qualitative evaluation showed that areas where the programs were undertaken achieved less outmigration and stronger social institutions. In terms of contributions to the SDGs, 7 to 10% revival of representative ecosystems was found, and a 5% increase in agricultural production at a very modest cost. So what are the advantages of the tech capitals approach? Well, there really are in terms of allowing for an assessment of the cost effectiveness of measures in achieving target increases in natural capital as set out in the SDGs. Once the SDGs have been determined, we really should not have to undertake a cost-benefit analysis because the SDGs are some targets we've agreed on. So we want to achieve them the most cost-effective way, and one way of doing that is to find the increases in natural capital that we can achieve. Next slide, please. This is something relating to the work which we are planning to do with GGKP. And one line of which you may be interested to hear about is the links to the SEAA, which is the System of Environmental and Economic Accounting, ecosystem accounting that the UN Statistical Office has been working on and developing. We, and I particularly, have been involved in producing an updated set of guidelines for countries to do that. And we're providing guidance on the valuation of biotic natural capital based on the discounted present value of the flow of ecosystem services that we get from that natural capital. It's a difficult task to get agreement which on the way in which this is done, so that it can then go into the developing of asset accounts across for all national statistical offices. And the questions that arise are related to the valuation flows. You can value the flows based on current institutional and social practices and how ecosystem assets are used. But we can also do it by looking at how the flows would change if we change the way in which assets are exploited. So by changing the way in which assets are exploited, we will get a different value of natural capital. And this increase in natural capital can then be related to the asset base, which would go into the wealth accounts of the countries. So this is a work we're proposing to do with the SEAA, but it's not yet been confirmed. It's something we're talking about. Next slide, please. So the estimates of the natural capital gains from the SDGs can be made and they can be consistent. The advantage here is that they will be consistent with the SEAA methodology. There's a lot of discussion about how we value the ecosystem services, and they have to be valued for this purpose using exchange values, which have to then which are consistent with the way we prepare our national accounts. The data which you need for this is related to the current ecosystem assets, and now we have a lot of information on the way in which these assets are spatially distributed, and we can carry out the analysis as part of the national asset accounts, but in a very granular way. We need to look at possible changes in management regimes, and these have to be discussed with national resource managers, and consideration would be given to making a shift to sustainable regimes of management where possible. this work and the other work that we're doing, which I might say a few words, although John will mention them again, John Maughan will say something, is to help to develop the methodologies that I've discussed at the national level with some more countries, so that we can, if countries are interested to pursue this approach, the GGKP will be working with some of them to carry out more assessments, the national assessments that I've talked about, but for the individual, for those particular countries. We'll also try and provide guidance to those countries in terms of how to proceed in doing this kind of analysis. I think that's it. Next slide, please. So that's my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Anil. That was great. Just a couple of points of emphasis and maybe one question. I thought it was really interesting how you've been able to document the positive benefit cost ratios of these investments in natural capital. I think that's beginning to have some real influence on policymakers, in particular financial institutions who've been working with several banks in Australia and around the world who are looking to put natural capital on the books when they're making investments and making loans. So I think this idea is really beginning to catch on. So thank you for documenting all of that. One question I had in relationship to the SEAA and their insistence that only exchange values be included in the valuation, given that we know that many, if not most, natural capital assets are best thought of as public goods, as common, rather than private goods that can be exchanged in markets, although there's a range across that spectrum. Do you see that as a limitation in the SEAA, or is there any movement to go beyond that restriction? Because certainly some of the more important values are going to be left out if we limit it to just exchange values.
Yes, Bob, you're raising a very important point, and indeed, the asset accounts that the SEAA is producing is wrestling with exactly that question. The valuations that national statistical offices want to work with are based on exchange values, but the flow of services for these assets, which are, as you rightly point out, public, often public goods, can also be valued in terms of their welfare values. And we have in the new guidelines what we call bridge tables, where we compare exchange values with welfare values. In this way, we can get an idea of where there are differences. And so for policy purposes, where we want to see the benefits of investment, we may well want to use welfare values. But for the purposes of what will go into the statistical accounts, we may also report the exchange values. The problem with we are trying to if you like bridge that gap in the assessment. But you make a good point. Thank you.
Well, I'm glad to hear there's some progress in the thinking there. It's certainly taken enough time. I'm glad to hear that there's some things going in the right direction. But maybe one follow-up to that. The whole system of national accounts is based on a model of the economy that's just the market, and that's fairly static, not dynamic. That sort of leaves out essentially the natural and social capital assets. Do you think we need to go beyond that system of national accounts conception to start thinking of the economy embedded in society and the rest of nature, and in a more dynamic sort of simulation approach, that we need to sort of take an even bigger step forward, and how we conceive of the connections between natural and social and built and human capital.
Yes, and there has been, and there continues to be a lot of interest in trying to find ways in which we try and we address the limitations of the present system of national accounting, which there's no shortage of evidence on the ways in which they are deficient. And as you are well aware, there's a lot of work which has been going on. People have talked about ways in which we might want to amend that, to supplement that. And I think that a considerable part of that work is certainly of value. I just feel that at this point, for the to have an expansion of the national accounts within the current framework is also of some use, because this will be a way in which we can expand it, first in two directions. One is to give us an idea of where what the contribution that ecosystem services are making to the current national accounts, which are not properly attributed, and then to expand the framework so that more services are brought in. If you like, this may be a way of getting our foot in to the accounting system, and perhaps subsequently we can look to even further developments along the lines that you mentioned.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I think there will be continuing, or I hope there will be continuing evolution of these ideas, and hopefully more rapidly than in the past. We have a couple of questions, but I think maybe we'll save those for the general discussion after we have the panelists present. So I'd like to move on now to Gitika Goswami, who's the Program Director of Development Alternatives, and she's going to give a short talk. We'll then hear from Peter Katanisa and Nazira Kerimalieva. And after the panelists have all given their presentation, we'll have a significant amount of time for general questions on all of the topics that have been raised. So, Gitika, thank you. Take it away.
Hello.
Nice.
Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yes.
So, yeah. Thank you, Bob. So my presentation is on the India case study that Dr. Anil has already mentioned. So I'll just go a little, detail in this study. So it's evaluating the impact of land remediation in the Bundelkhand region in India, a case study towards investing on natural capital for achieving SDGs. Next, please. So land degradation, as you all know, that it's very much related. Land degradation, biodiversity loss, and climate change are three different phases of the same central challenge. And in the coupled human environmental system, land degradation is a significant matter of concern that currently affect 1.3 billion people worldwide directly and poses a threat to 3.2 billion more. And leading factors responsible for land degradation in India are mostly water erosion, vegetation degradation, unsustainable farming, wind erosion, and other land use practices. And currently there is 96.4 million hectares of land in India is undergoing land degradation. And as a result, 30% of its land area is witnessing declining productivity, and this eventually leads to loss of biodiversity, food and water security, and loss of human well-being, along with multiple other problems. Next, please. So with this background, I would like to talk about this initiative that is done by Development Alternatives, a think tank in India. We are, our headquarters is in Delhi, but we have our field in Bundelkhand, that's a central belt of India, in the Bundelkhand region is a very arid kind of region, and having high rainfall in a very short period of time, and therefore land erosion, soil erosion is one of the biggest challenge there. Along with that, there's climatic factors, and climate change is also another very big problem. So with this background, Development Alternatives has been working here for last 3 decades, and mainly for watershed management, and has done like check dams and gradient structure. There's also farm ponds have been built. So these are all the infrastructure that has been made. Along with that, we had invested on sustainable agriculture, climate adaptive planning, and forest management and biodiversity conservation. Along with that, there is also investment done on institution building like SDGs and FPOs, the farmer producer organization, and there is also that is building the social capital on training, awareness generation, to capacity building. So that's how the Development Alternatives has been working there for last 3 decades. So when we had next please. So with this background, when Development Alternative has been doing this, next please. So we have the entire slide. So when with this background, we along with the GGKP and Dr. Anil, we had done a pilot study on the economics of land degradation in the same area. So since we are already there for last 3 decades, we have the data that is available for where before all this kind of land intervention, what was the situation there, and after the intervention, what is the current situation there. So we have taken these three districts. It is there. If you can see, it's the 3 districts: Shivpuri, Niwari, and Datia. This 3 district in Bundelkhand region, where we have taken as a sample, and 300 household has been surveyed with 18 intervention villages, and we also taken 12 control villages where there was no intervention as done. So that actually helped us to compare the benefits which has been which the communities actually received after the intervention has been made. And this was the comparison years was 2013 and 2018-19. So there was a 5 years continuous sort of monitoring done, and the data collection has been done. So the objective of our study was to evaluate the potential of the land remediation activities as beneficial and cost-effective measure for combating desertification, and also mapping the intervention benefits with the SDG goals and other international goals. So these are, you can see those of the photographs where we were getting the data collection done, and we were the next please. The methodology was mainly to talk to the local people, to do FGDs, the focus group discussion, and so on. Next please. So there's one more. So the research methodology that we had taken was we actually following the ELD methodology. Next please. There's a two more click please. So one is that ELD methodology, and then we also use the Invest software to get the analysis done. We use a GIS based mapping softwares, and we also use a capital approach and SDG approach. So there is 3 capital we mainly had taken here. The capitals are the natural capital, which is mainly to look after the crop production. So whatever the natural the investment has been done of building the natural capital, the indicators became the crop production, the fodder and livestock, forest products, biodiversity, carbon sequestration. On the front of the human and social capital, we took the indicators of the social institution, migration, out migration, obviously, ecosystem perception, education, health. And for cultural capital, we took the traditional healthcare practices based in the plant-based medicine and the festivals and ritual, which are also, very much intertwined with the nature. Next, please. With this, using this methodology, we are actually also trying to see that what are the different ecosystem service indicators. So out of these 4 ecosystem service categories, provisioning service, regulatory service, supporting, and cultural services, we took this indicators. So under provisioning services, we took the crop production, fodder availability, water availability for irrigation, timber and NTFPs, and the indicators are like yield of crops, products, number of times irrigation has been given, number of irrigation sources available. So timber and NTFPs, we also collected the fuel collection, medicinal plant, and other NTFP collection from the forest. Then regulatory services, we look at the carbon, both the below ground and soil carbon. Supporting services, it means the soil health and main species abundance. So what are the different sort of biodiversity indicators that is there? Then for the cultural services, we also have done qualitative assessment of the cultural capital through different case studies. Next, please. So the main outcome of this land remediation, if you can see, I mean, Dr. Anil also have mentioned. So all those this investment that has been done, the benefits that was there was the local level livelihood benefits through agriculture, livestock rearing, and agro-based other activities, improved access to water. So a lot of people has actually from single crop to they converted to the double crop because of this water availability, even during Rabi season. Then strengthening of the human and social cultural capital, that community awareness and skill development increase, migration been reduced, community-based institution became functioning, and healthcare system improved. And then ecosystem benefit like positive biodiversity impact, improvement of the soil carbon storage increased, contribution in national level targets and commitments. So there are also a lot of SDG targets that also actually been tracked through this kind of intervention. I'll come to the next slide and we'll show that. Then there is other targets like LDN, land degradation neutrality target, and CBD target like the convention of biological diversity target. Next. So so these are the natural capital accounting. I will not go deep into this, but this is how we did the data collection and then analyzed it in different software. And here in the pie chart, you can see that the cropping pattern of the beneficiary and intervention villages has been changed over time and over this 5 years time. And in this beneficiary villages, the double crop has been increased from 37% to 45%, and this is the benefit that we are getting from them. So there is also increased net gain from the cropland, highest aggregate gain in that tier 1 district, and share of double cropland increased in beneficiary villages or intervention villages. Impact of the intervention that responded reported increase in irrigation facilities is the maximum benefit that they have received over this. Next, please. So natural, the same that for livestock and forest also the benefits was really high in intervention villages. Here you can see in this in the bar graph that in 2013 and 2018, the blue one is the intervention villages and the red one is the control villages, where we can see the benefits of which has been received by the communities on 2013 to 2018 is almost 3 times in the intervention villages, whereas it is control villages, it is really less. Next, please. While we are talking about the biodiversity benefit, you can also see the mean species abundance. So the biodiversity has been increased in the intervention villages much more than in the control villages, and that is because of this water availability, because of this cropping pattern change, and that's how the more sort of biodiversity increased during this time. The next, please. So, and in summing up, I just want to run you through that with these all capitals, all the ecosystem services, I think the natural capital, mainly the crop, the forest, carbon and biodiversity benefit, you can see that upon investment of 3.9, this is 39 million, actually 3.9 crores, 39 million Indian rupees investment, which is 0.53 million USD investment, the benefits within this 5 years time was $69.78 million, which is actually 170 times more than what was the investment. In one village in Datia, same as in Shivpuri, it is also around 180 times, and in the third village also it is almost like 120 times. So this is a kind of return that that has been received through this calculation and within this 5 years of time. Next, please. So through this, since this the webinar is to talk about the saving SDGs and to achieve SDGs by 2030. I think these are one kind of a pilot study which can really show how much benefits that can be received by investment on natural capital, and also at the same time, while investing natural capital, you can very well achieve the SDGs. So through this intervention, we can achieve SDGs, and very clearly written here the national target and the global target. So basically it is addressing SDG 1, 2, SDG 6 for water, 8 for our health, 12 for sustainable cities and sustainable consumption and production, 13 for on the climate change target. Next, please. And 14 and the 15 is the biodiversity on land target mostly, and obviously the 17 that our sharing and target. Next, please. So these are so policy recommendation. If we have to interpret the findings and to recommend to the policymakers, so it's very important that all the programs and schemes which is being done by the government, it should be holistically monitored, and the data should be that framework should be very clear, so that the data can be data collection can be done from the initial and the from the baseline, so that this calculations can be done, and we can really show that how much benefit that is being done through this land remediation activities. So there is also the many cases the natural capital is only being talked about in the research level and study level, but policymakers are not that much focusing on that. So I mean, that is one thing they need to now focus to really achieve the SDGs by 2030. The next, please. So the financial resource allocation strategy is also very important. So to mandate the commitment to contribute the national target, to consider both financial viability in short and long-term potential is important. Environmental parameter in national performance estimation, in the common estimation method at the national level for tracking economic growth like GDPs and human development growth, relevant environmental parameters need to be considered. And reframing the widely and most commonly used national performance estimation methods through inter and intra-country dialogue involving relevant stakeholders like administrative, economic, the research and practitioners all should be coming in the same platform to actually, contribute for the overall the sustainable development of a country. Next, please. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, Gitika. It was wonderful. In the interest of time, I think we're going to move on. We'll take some questions after all of our panelists have spoken. So next up, we have Peter Katanisa from Environment, Natural Resources, and Blue Economy at the World Bank Group, and coordinator of the Natural Capital Accounting Community of Practice in Africa. So Peter, take it away.
Other world. Thank you, Robert. And I would like to say good morning to you all, for those who are in the morning hours, and good afternoon or good evening. Thank you so much for inviting me to share some of the work that we've done in Rwanda, but also in the perspective of the African Natural Capital Accounting Community of Practice, what is happening on the continent in the area of natural capital, and also try to link it with the SDG agenda. So I would like to start by thanking our valuable partner institution, Green Growth Knowledge Platform, which is working with the Africa Community of Practice, for taking this time to organize this timely knowledge sharing webinar. Thank you, John, San, and the entire team at GGKP for the wonderful work that you're doing. I'll start by trying to introduce to members the Community of Practice, the African Natural Capital Accounting Community of Practice. Started way back in 2019, in November in Uganda. It was launched in Uganda. And it aims to build momentum and mainstream natural capital accounting in statistical production and policy across Africa through capacity building and knowledge sharing between government institutions, non-government organizations, and the academia. As of today, the Community of Practice has more than 500 members from more than 50 countries out of the 52 countries across Africa. And also we are honored that we have members who also joined from 12 plus non-African countries. And I would highly encourage all members who are in this webinar, participating in this webinar, to join the Community of Practice and take forward the natural capital accounting program to influence policy and national planning within the African countries. So trying to link this with terrestrial natural capital, I believe that the terrestrial natural capital accounting will contribute more meaningfully and mainly in implementing SDG 15 that aims to restore, promote sustainable use of terrestrial ecosystems, more specifically to SDG 15.3, which aims by 2030 combat desertification, restore degraded land and soil, and including land affected by the desertification, drought, and floods, and strive to achieve a land degradation neutral world. This is a very ambitious target for all the world, and we believe that with different initiatives coming together, the world can be able to achieve this degradation neutral world as we all aspire to be. It will further play a major achieving role in terms of the SDG 15.9 that stipulates that by 2020 to 30, integration of ecosystem and biodiversity values into national and local planning, development processes, and poverty reduction strategies and accounts. And I think we would have achieved this, but I don't know how far we've gone. I think we'll have a discussion on this to see how much we have gone in terms of achieving this target. So African governments and their partners are steadily using the natural capital accounting tools and measures to implement SDGs. With this, I would want to share what is going on in my country, Rwanda, starting with Rwanda. the government of Rwanda, in partnership with the GGKP, are piloting a project of achieving green growth through terrestrial natural capital restoration in Rwanda. Was officially launched in Kigali at the workshop in December 2019. The goal of this project is to underpin the central role of natural capital in macroeconomic output and to facilitate improved decision-making in green growth policies and to achieve national SDG targets. This project is very important to help Rwanda to integrate the non-marketed value of ecosystem services and natural capital accounting in the national macroeconomic framework and the system of national accounts. So integrated, the model which is being used by the team of experts is the Integrated Economic Environment Modeling platform. The findings will focus on understanding the economic impacts, land cover impacts, and ecosystem services impact. And I'm pleased to inform the participants that actually the key findings of this work will be presented in a workshop, of course, with the COVID impacts and the pandemic. We will have a virtual webinar to discuss the findings of this work. And I'm very sure that from different institutions which is present here, they will be able to share with all members of this webinar those findings. So quickly, I feel like it's very important for us to understand from African perspective what are some of the comparing examples of how terrestrial natural capital accounting has been used to inform and to influence SDG implementation in African countries. I will share some of the comparing and successful stories from African continents. I'll start with Rwanda. It's very important to mention that the work that we will be presenting next week with GGKP and ELD will be work which has been identified as key, building on the wealth accounting and evaluation ecosystem program that the World Bank has been implementing with the government of Rwanda for the past almost 5 years. So in Rwanda, through the WAVE program, we've managed to develop mainly 4 accounts: the land account, the land and ecosystem account, the mineral account, and the water account under the WAVES program. So from the WAVES program, the account shows that in 2015, approximately 158 million tons of soil were eroded, with an average soil loss of 62 tons per hectare per year, or 13 tons per person per year. The trend since 1990 shows that soil erosion has increased by 54%. Soil loss has implications for fertilizer costs, food prices, water pollution, and food security. So from these land and ecosystem accounts, recommendations from the accounts reinforce the priority that Rwanda is planning to expanding sustainable land management practices, improving catchment management, water capture and resilience, developing basin-wide environment management programs, including water and soil conservation measures, waterway rehabilitations, wetland protections, construction of drainage systems, and riverside landscape improvement, as Rwanda is a hilly and valley country, and promoting green urbanization through effective water harvesting, urban food gardens to promote water infiltration, and green open spaces to promote infiltration and to dissipate local flooding. So among the outcomes of this, we've seen that there are a number of impacts related to land use change and land cover change. And interestingly, this year, the land account and the ecosystem and the water account informed the new land use master plan, which was approved by the government of Rwanda in October this year, last month. So that's one of the example of how it's very important to have these natural capital account, most especially when we talk about terrestrial landscape restoration programs. Rwanda is already on a good progress in terms of already that the data and the information and the policy recommendation that were generated by these natural capital accounting programs are already informing the national policy and planning processes and strategies. So if I take a second example, I'll take the example of Zambia. Zambia's land accounts reveal how land cover is changing rapidly and in different ways across every province in Zambia. The land accounts provided the best platform for relating to the supply of diverse ecosystems, including erosion control from each area of land, which can help with local level decisions on the best practices to managing landscapes for multiple values, including managing climate change risk and adapting to climate change. Data from the land accounts have directly informed the design of 4 major integrated landscape projects in Zambia so that diverse yet compatible uses can be made of the land resources. In the future, the land accounts can inform the basis for detailed accounting of multiple ecosystem services and management within Zambia. Also, Zambia's forest accounts have demonstrated the country's dependency on its forest assets, the many pressures on them and the risks to them, but the accounts have also revealed how forests can contribute to sustainable development. The forest accounts show that 80% of Zambia's energy consumption comes from fuel wood, yet only 3% of this harvest was licensed in 2015. The year-on-year data reveal how harvesting for charcoal increased sharply when the electricity subsidy was removed and then hydropower production fell after a drought. That's another interesting work that is coming from Zambia, and it was launched, the findings was launched in the beginning of this month, last week. And in Uganda, they worked on land and forest natural capital work, specifically the wood asset and forest resources accounts, which was produced this year in 2020. It looks at cover the stocks and flows of Uganda's wood resources to rising demand for food products as a result of population and urbanization. The national wood demand is projected to more than double between 2015 and 2040, from 48 million tons to 105 million tons per annum. If that happens, wood supply from areas defined as forest will be fully depleted by 2025, leaving an annual wood supply deficit of 72,615 tons by 2030. In order for Uganda to reverse these trends, strategic intervention will be required to enhance sustainable wood production, introduce principles of resource rents, and improve the market structure for wood products, restore and conserve natural forests. So as you can see, progress is being done across Africa. However, more efforts and resources are needed to continue investing in generating consistent data and enhance capacity for implementing SDGs related environment and natural resources and climate resilience. So with that, I thank you, and I'm ready to share more if time allows. Thank you. Back to you, Robert.
Okay, thank you very much, Peter. That was really informative. Great presentation. So we're going to have to move on quickly here to our final speaker in the panel, who is Nazira. She's the head of Sustainable Development and Environmental Statistics at the National Statistics Committee of the Kyrgyz Republic. So, Nazira, thank you and welcome.
Hi, everyone. It's also a pleasure for me to make a presentation regarding experience in technology. I will do a very short presentation. Please, can you share my presentation? Okay. So first I will try to explain the reasons why we start the project related to the gardens in the Kyrgyz Republic. Of course, there are two. First, it's on the global level. Kyrgyz Republic was in alignment with another UN countries, they set to achieve sustainable development goals. And of course, it's include goals 2, goals 13, and goals 15. And there are another international programs which also was accepted by Kyrgyz Republic, and to get the results of this program global strategies, Kyrgyz Republic has to make some activities and has to monitor the achievements. So, but Kyrgyz Republic also sent some documents on the national level. It's one of them is National Development Strategy, it's long-term strategy, and also another short-term strategy is utility trust and development. And this strategy includes activities related to economic assessment of natural capital resources. So, and 2 years before, Kyrgyzstan also started to realize a new economy program where natural capital and land itself was the main element of developing green economy. Next slide, please. So, within our project, next slide, please. Within our project, we had a wide discussion as we managed to involve different stakeholders. Some of them is from sorry, it's better now? Can you hear me? Next slide, please.
Next slide, please.
Within our project, we had a wide discussion as we have managed to involve different stakeholders. Some of them is from government office, it's National Statistical Committee of the Kyrgyz Republic, State Agency under the government office, and Ministry of Agriculture. Also, we have involved academia, and within our project, we had a team from University of Central Asia. And in our team, we had a public organization. It was Society of Soil Science in Kyrgyzstan, and international organization which support us. Here I should inform that on the slides, it's not all the stakeholders who participate in the discussion. We had a lot of meetings and other stakeholders who also try to make contribution to our project. Next slide. What we have managed to achieve within our project. First, Kyrgyz Republic is one of the countries who is really trying to implement SEAA methodology for natural capital resources, and we already have experience in developing forest accounts, but it's long understood land is the main natural capital resources for any country. In this project, we have decided to develop first piloted land accounts country. So, but we had a lot of data gaps. We tried to put in physical terms, and of course, we have to do it. We try to do it according to SEAA methodology. Here, I would like to close it.
Nazira? Nazira, we're having a really hard time hearing you with the microphone, and your audio is really not. It's really muted a bit. So would you mind if you sort of quickly scroll through your slides, and then people can maybe take a look online at your presentation, and we can move on to the panel discussion. We only have another 10 minutes anyway. So can you try and just quickly go through? Oh, there you go. We're at the last.
Okay, I will do this very fast. Okay,
Thanks.
I need to means I will just try to build the first land accounts, and also we have managed to build a land classification. So we manage our national land classification in the national one. Also, we have determination of main gaps in data to develop not only land accounts, we also try to have a look for soil accounts, and based on ELD methodology, we built a scenario for cost-benefit analysis. And within our project, we built two geodata. One of them is related to land accounts, and another one soil accounts. And the main advantages for us is build capacity building for all stakeholders who was involved for this role. So thank you. Yeah, I don't know why it's so horrible.
Yeah, thank you. I'm sorry about the technical problems there. But thank you for that presentation. And people can see the full presentation online. We'll send around the link. So if we can have all three of the panelists back on, we have time for a few questions. Everybody back on? We just have a few minutes here. Okay, I think that's almost everyone. And we had some questions that were asked that we wanted to ask everyone. The first one is, how will land restoration save the 2030 agenda for sustainable development? And we need some very quick answers on this. We have 4 questions that we want to get through, and not a whole lot of time. We have about 9 more minutes. So anyone want to tackle that one? How is land restoration really going to save the agenda? Our investment in natural capital. I think you've all sort of covered this in your presentations. So if you want to say something more, yes, Gitika. Turn your microphone on.
Yes. So I have already shown that slide that in the pilot study that how much the investment on the land is actually giving return like 170 times if we had done it in a proper way. So we, and that's how we can very easily achieve the SDGs. And all of the panelists has also shown that land degradation, the land remediation is not only addressing one SDGs. This is around 7 to 8 SDGs that are directly affecting. So land remediation is one option where we can save the SDGs agenda 2030.
Thank you. Anyone else on that one? Maybe we'll move on to the next question, which is, what are the knowledge gaps that inhibit countries from leveraging the many economic, social, and environmental benefits of land restoration? And maybe we can expand that a bit. I think there are knowledge gaps, but there are also other sort of barriers to leveraging these benefits, in addition to just knowledge. Political constraints, economic constraints, special interest, etc.? What do you think are the big barriers to this agenda moving forward in your countries?
Perhaps I can say a few words.
Anil, yes.
Well, I think one of them is that to a great extent, we need to pass on the knowledge that we are demonstrating today of the significant benefits from land remediation, which are not only captured in terms of the what you might call them the marketed gains, but there are wider gains which indirectly benefit a lot of people, and we need to demonstrate and show who these different beneficiaries are if these programs are undertaken. I think that if that is done, the support for such programs could significantly be increased.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that our overemphasis of GDP as a measure of social progress is one of the barriers that we need to expand our conception of what contributes to well-being and sustainability?
Well, I think we can certainly address that, but I think particularly on land remediation issues, we don't need to go as far as GDP. I think we can show it in terms of the indicators that we talked about, which are indicators of benefits, some of which would not appear in the national accounts.
Exactly. Yes. Thank you. Okay, Peter, you had your hand up, and then Gitika.
Yes, thank you, Robert. I wanted to mention also that in terms of knowledge gaps, there's issue of data generation and the availability to report nationally on land use and restoration indicators of interest to policymakers and the public is required to be generated consistently. This will need more investment in terms of generating data. But also it is important to mention that good performance management systems need to be supported by good data analysis and good reporting, which has been reportedly underfunded in some instances in the past, most especially if you look at most of the work that has been done in natural capital accounting and sustainable land management across Africa. So yes, the data land sets is scattered among range of agencies and ministries. So institutional enhancement is also very important in terms of building their knowledge and capacity for them to be able to manage better the natural resources and environment ecosystem services.
Mm-hmm. Great. Yes, thank you. Gitika.
Yeah. From the India perspective, I can say, three main gaps which is visible while we are doing the study. So first one is there's a comprehensive, holistic planning of the entire thing. So while the government of India has a lot of schemes, developmental schemes, and there are several ministries or the state departments, they are having their schemes, but sometimes we can see that these schemes are basically contradictory each other. So there is also like maybe the forest department, they have a plan of afforestation in certain areas, where at the same time the animal husbandry department has some scheme and they are providing some benefits to the villagers for goat rearing. So in the same fringe village where the goat rearing is happening and afforestation is being happening, so there is a conflicting situation, and most of the cases those the plantations will not survive, and so that the investment of the natural capital will not be received. So that is one. So all the departments should have the comprehensive and holistic planning. The second one is a gap between the studies, the research, and as well as the policy decision making. So while there are researchers having their research done, but and very limited kind of findings of those research are actually going to the policymaker, and so therefore that gap is is very important to address. The other thing is, and when we are having any kind of policy decision taken, it is many cases it has been seen that it has been taken in a for a short term sort of benefit rather than to view as a long term benefit. So that is, and that long term benefit can come from that the researchers, the kind of studies that is being done. The other important thing is, while we are having this policy decisions taken, in very limited cases it happens that the policymakers hear from the ground, the local communities, the knowledge that is there with the local communities is barely reached to that decision making level. So I think those are different gaps, and if that gaps can be addressed, we can very well drive the SDG goals very, very soon. Thank you.
Thank you. So the theme I hear running through all of this is the lack of integration across disciplines to study ecosystem services and value them, and integration across government policies and departments. And we live in a very disciplinary and siloed world still. So it seems like what we need, the real barrier is how do we build those bridges and better integrate across all of these different aspects, and integrate also between the short-term and the long-term implications. I think is very important. Do you see that happening in your countries? Do you see this broader integration, more whole systems thinking, or not? This is a yes or no question.
No, not that much, and that's that findings of one kind of this study. Yeah.
Peter, do you see that happening?
Yes, it's happening slowly, but gradually it's happening.
Okay, good. Anil, do you see this happening? Are we getting there?
I think we're making progress. I like to think that what part of what we've heard of today is a sign that we're moving in the right direction. Of course, we've still a long way to go.
Yes. No, I think we're making enormous progress, and these things do take time. And the whole concept of natural capital and ecosystem services, I think, is finally, at the very top of the policy agenda in many circles, and it's beginning to actually serve as a bridge across the conservation community, the sort of financial community, and the policy community. So, thank you all for your participation. I think I'm going to bring this discussion to an end. I think there's much more to talk about, and hopefully we'll have that continuing discussion online in various forums, and maybe eventually we'll be able to all physically meet together again somewhere in the world in the not too distant future. So I hope to meet you in person somewhere soon. So
thank you, Robert.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Good night. Thank you.
Great discussion.
Bye.
Bye-bye.